Welcome to the Last Life Ever podcast. My name is Jeffrey Holst, and that crazy laughing girl is Jillian Sidoti. How are you today, Jillian?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Oh, right. We have a very exciting guest today, C.W. Burgers, who lives both in the Netherlands and also in the United States. Splits his time. He has dual citizenship. He's a fascinating character, and we're going to interview him right now.
Help me, my brother, can you lend me a hand as I walk through this land of confusion? If we give to each other, then there's nothing to take. Let's live life for the moment before it slips away.
Hey there, Jillian.
Hello, everybody out there in Last Life Everland.
That's right. Well, listen, CW, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you. We're talking about your unique situation in that you have, as long as I've known you, and just to be clear, I've known you for several years now, probably a decade or more. Well, maybe like almost 20 years now, right?
Yeah.
Sounds about right. And the whole time that I've known you, you've consistently lived part-time in Europe and part-time in the United States. And that's what we want to talk to you about, what it's like to sort of straddle the ocean and kind of bounce back and forth. So, but because I already know everything there is to know about CW, Jillian, I'm going to let you take it away.
How come I have this feeling like I'm going to start asking questions and you're going to interrupt me to ask more questions? Because that's usually what happens.
It does happen, yeah. This time, I'm going to mute myself and I'm not talking the rest of the show.
Okay. I happen to find this fascinating, CW. So how often, obviously coronavirus has put a little bit of a crimp in your lifestyle. How often before coronavirus happened were you going back and forth between the Netherlands, which is where you are right now, and the United States?
Quite a bit. On a normal year, it could depend. It could be, I think, probably the most I ever went back and forth was around 8 times.
In a year?
Yeah. In a single year.
Wow.
I did my master's over here. So I've also lived here. I also, when I was in high school, I did an exchange year over here. So I've spent a lot of times back and forth. I also studied a year in Germany through Michigan State. Program. Weirdly, the longest time I've never traveled to Europe was when I worked for an international development NGO in the European department. I never traveled to Europe during that whole time, and that's the longest period I've gone without traveling abroad, actually.
So let's back up for a second. You're from Michigan, I take it. You mentioned Michigan State, and I know Jeff here is from Michigan as well. So I'm drawing some lines. So did you live in Michigan your entire childhood, or tell me about that?
No, well, the vast majority of my childhood, I actually went to 7 different school districts growing up. So I also spent time in New Orleans as a kid.
Okay.
And then in the Athens, Georgia area.
Why was that?
That had to do with my parents' jobs at the time. So, yeah.
No, I had a very similar experience growing up because my dad was an engineer for the government, and so every time he finished building a job, we moved to another state. I lived in Alabama, New York, Maine, Massachusetts, Puerto Rico. We just lived Chicago. I was born in Chicago, so we lived all over the place. So I always find it fascinating to find other people who moved to, 7 different school districts. There's a lot of different school districts. Do you think that is the reason why it makes it so easy for you to travel back and forth between Europe, because you had that experience as a child?
I think so. I think it makes it easier. It's made it easier for me to move to different areas on a whim or without hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, and it's interesting. In one way, I have a lot of different homes that I've built over the years. New Orleans, Michigan. I lived in D.C. for a few years. But on the other hand, sometimes I feel like I don't have a home. Like some people have a definitive hometown. And if somebody said, "What's my hometown?" That I would say Lansing, Michigan, but it's really difficult to say.
I completely understand that. So CW, I'm curious. So you obviously made it to college in the United States, and then you said you did a study abroad program in Germany. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And that
so did you have to learn German before you went to Germany?
Yeah. So I took 2 years of German at Michigan State. I had also had it in high school. I think also for 2 years. And then they had this program. The professor gave some presentation on it. And as I was leaving, I said, yeah, I might be interested in that. The next thing I know, next class, he came with a stack of paperwork and he said, fill this out. And I filled it out. And it's weird. I never really decided I was going to study abroad because it was a year-long program. Big commitment at that when you're 20 years old.
Right.
But next thing I knew, I was doing.
We've lost his audio, I think, there.
I
for
think
a second.
so.
That's very unfortunate. And so hopefully it sounds like his headphones may have died. I'm not sure.
That's okay. Well, listen, Jeff, what do you think about learning something like German? Because to me, German's like 2 years to learn German does not seem like long enough.
I took 1 semester of German in community college. Yes, 1 semester of German in community college. And when I studied German, I did very poorly. I got my lowest grade ever in my college career in German. I got a D- in my 1 semester of German. Yes. And the only thing I remember is this. Und so warte in deinem Himmel. Dein Name werde geheiligt. I don't know. We'll see how good CW's German is.
Yeah, that's from the Bible.
So it is.
Your name will be.
It's the Lord's Prayer, actually.
Is it?
Dein Himmel. Yeah, dein Name werde geheiligt. Dein Reich komme.
The only thing I know in German is Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Nein.
Oh, I also know Wo ist der Flughafen?
What's that mean?
Yeah, like I have this theory. It's my travel theory, and that is if you learn to ask how to order beer and how to get to the airport in every language, you'll never be stuck anywhere in the world.
Those are the most important
wait a minute.
Now.
So let's. You took 2 years of German, which doesn't seem like long enough to learn German. Was it?
I would say my German level when I was accepted was iffy. Mm-hmm. Now, the way they worked in this program is we arrived in the summer and then they put us to a immersion course.
Cool, yeah.
So for 2 months, because German semesters start quite late September, early October.
Okay.
And for 2 months, we just had German every single day.
Okay, so you just had German every single day. All right, that's interesting. So that probably made a big difference. Did people speak English to you, or no? They just were like, no, we got to speak German to you so you can learn German.
If you live in Germany, you have to speak German eventually. I mean, there will be obviously a lot of people who can speak English, and a lot of people will. But if you really want to live day-to-day life in Germany, then you have to speak German. I mean, as a tourist, you'll be fine. Especially nowadays, most people have a decent understanding of English. But if you want to live there, you have to speak German.
So interesting. Besides your German, which I guess is not perfect, since or it could be my terrible accent from my 1 failed semester of German. But besides German, you speak Dutch, obviously, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, did you grow up speaking Dutch?
No, actually.
Hold on a second. You jumped really far there, Jeff.
I know. Well, I'm curious. We're talking about languages.
Speak Dutch?
Well, he lives in the Netherlands.
I
You
no,
mentioned that
But
at the
as a
beginning.
child, you asked him as a child, Jeffrey.
That's
let me
true.
handle this.
Yeah, that's why you're asking questions. I'm remuting.
Okay. Jeff kind of let the cat out of the bag. So I understand, because Jeff told me, that your father is Dutch, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So did he immigrate from the Netherlands to the United States?
Yeah, he got accepted to a PhD program, and so he was doing that in the United States, and then he met my mother, and then I was
very
born.
good. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. So the PhD program, what did he get accepted to in a PhD program?
Marketing.
Oh, wow. Interesting. That's cool. So then he came over here and and he spoke Dutch, obviously, but he didn't teach you Dutch?
No, no, we didn't speak Dutch at home because my mother is American. So no, it wasn't until I went on a foreign exchange program through high school.
Wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. We got two different things going on here. So in college, you went on a foreign exchange trip to Germany.
Or study abroad, yeah.
Or study abroad. Oh, study abroad. Okay. And then in high school, you went on a foreign exchange trip.
Yep.
So you went to Germany knowing how to speak Dutch?
Yeah. My Dutch was pretty good at the time. Yep.
I mean, those are three vastly different languages. Am I wrong about that?
No, they're not very different. As a matter of fact, they're quite related.
Okay, so, Dutch and German are.
Yeah. So yeah.
Very good. So that must have helped out a lot when learning German.
Yeah, definitely.
If somebody were to if somebody were to learn Dutch or German, what would you recommend that they choose?
Well, an American, despite my fondness for Dutch, I'd probably say German would be more useful.
Okay.
Just because the Dutch almost universally speak English. I mean, English speaking here has to be 90% plus.
Okay.
And of course, it's a smaller Sprachraum, linguistic area than German, of course.
Okay, very cool. Okay, so you went to a foreign exchange program in high school. You came back from that. What were you studying in college that made you end up in Germany in the first place?
I was studying history.
Okay.
And yeah, German was like I said, with history at Michigan State, I think almost all universities, you also have to take a foreign language. And so for me, German was the natural one. And then, like I said, the study abroad program, I just, kind of got into it. Which was a great time. So
what we really want to talk to you about here is, and I'm just trying to get to the point where you end up moving to Europe, but specifically the Netherlands. Where in the Netherlands when and where did you move to in the Netherlands?
Well, I've lived in the Netherlands, I guess, 4 different periods of time. So I've lived in Groningen, which is a city in the north. Leiden, which is where I did my master's. It's where the Pilgrims lived before they came to the United States. It's quite famous for that, I guess, or it's known for that. And then right now I live in Rotterdam.
Okay. So you, and when did you do that? Right after college or something?
No, I first moved to the Netherlands. So right after college, I worked first in Michigan, and then I worked in DC for a couple of years.
Okay.
And then it was after that, because I had always wanted to do my education. That was always my plan to continue. And then I went back to Netherlands. I studied again for a few years in Groningen, and I lived there. Then I came back briefly. Then I went and worked some. Then I went to Leiden. Then I got my master's there. Okay.
Now, CW, you're a fascinating person, but that's not really why we had you on here today. The reason why we had you on here today is because what you did, you're doing all this traveling and going back and forth, and you ended up getting 2 passports. Can you tell us about what that process looked like and how somebody can do something like that and why somebody would want to do something like that?
Well, for me, it was quite simple because I technically never acquired a second citizenship because my father was Dutch. I was born with it, so I've always had two citizenships.
Okay.
Now, what makes me different than some other people, including my brother, for example, is I actually applied for the passport now, and chose to get the documentation and such.
Okay.
Now, for me, that was an easy process because I was a foreign exchange student living in the Netherlands. So I just went to the city hall and got my passport.
Okay.
Fair
Okay.
enough. All right,
Yeah.
listen, I wanna stop because we can go down this train of like, being a dual citizen and sort of like bouncing back and forth. But I want to tell you something, which Jillian, you would have no reason to ask. One of the reasons why I wanted CW on the show was because of the dual citizenship thing, but also because I feel like I'm reasonably well traveled. And whenever somebody says you must travel more than any person you know, I always say, no, I have this friend who lives in the Netherlands that travels more than anyone I know. I believe, CW, do you count how many countries you've been to?
I stopped. I used to.
Well, when did you stop? At what point do you remember how high you were when you stopped counting?
No.
Were we talking like high double digits? Or are we talking triple digits? Do you have any idea?
Not triple digits,
No,
so double digits. And I wish I could even give you a ballpark, but I really can't.
Fair enough. All right. Well, anyway, so the process of, and we've talked about this offline a little bit, the process of acquiring a second citizenship, and that's not something you're an expert in. But Jillian asked a question, which was why someone would want a second passport and a second citizenship. Maybe you can talk to us about that a little bit.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Obviously, for me, the Netherlands is also the European Union, which means I can live and study in any European Union country, or actually even Schengen countries, I believe, with no problem. And that's how I'm able to stay here as long as I want, or work here, or study. And when I study here, I pay domestic prices, and so actually I was paid to go to school here. I mean, they gave me money every month, which, was a big difference from doing your master's in the United States. And you also, as a student here, for example, you get a free unlimited travel card, which means you can just get on any train or any tram, whatever, and travel wherever you want within the Netherlands, which, if you like to travel, is obviously a pretty enticing benefit.
So would you encourage people to, if they can, get their kids into schools in Europe, even if it's just for a year, to be able to experience that? Is that a possibility?
I think so. Yeah. And I mean, you can do that. There's lots of programs to do foreign exchange and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
I did AFS was the name of, and also a Dutch friend of mine, she did that, and she went to Texas for a year. That's generally a good program. I definitely think that's always a good thing to do. It just gives you a different perspective, gives you,
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I don't even know if I mentioned this to you before, Jillian, but I did a short study abroad when I was in university. When I was in state school undergrad, I did 6 weeks in Cairo, which is how I fell in love with Egypt. And even just sitting in the same place and getting up and, leaving your hotel and going to this school and coming back to the same place, it's completely different than just traveling somewhere. Like, it's just a completely different feeling, right? I mean, you start to, I have friends in Cairo that I've had for 20 years now that I would never have made friends with, but I saw them every day over and over again. And you develop a relationship with them. And I've gone back to Egypt several times because of that.
Yeah. My guess is that you start assimilating and building relationships as opposed to like just, I get what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense to me, but I want to back up for just 1 second here, because, I was admiring your Instagram, CW, and this to me is probably the most fascinating picture on your Instagram. Here we go. It's spam. I'm just joking. This is not the most interesting, but you were just in Hawaii 35 weeks ago. Yeah. And since then, you've put on all of these pictures of What, and to explain these, because you have a lot of pictures of these, and it looks like you're sitting.
Hey,
in a
by the
house.
way, if you're listening to this audio after the fact, it's at CW Burgers, BURGERS.
Yes. Thank you.
Instagram at CW Burgers, so you can take a look at this while you're
I like
listening.
how I picked the one picture, Jeff, that you actually commented on.
I love that photo, though. That's yeah. It's,
Tell us about this architecture, because you have pictures of this architecture all through your Instagram, and it looks like you're sitting in a home that looks like this right now.
I mean, yes, that's correct.
What is, and this is Rotterdam?
Yes, this is Rotterdam.
So tell us about this. And what is this all? Are these apartments?
They're all houses.
Okay.
So I believe there's 34 of them.
Okay.
Plus 2 super cubes. They're called the cubes.
Okay.
Kubuswoningen in Dutch. And there's 2 big cubes. I can actually show you some if you don't.
Yeah.
mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So if we look at the window here, I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
Sorry. So this is one of the mega cubes right there. And so one of those is a hotel. They have businesses and stuff. This is another view. I don't know if you can see again, but
yeah, no, I just put you on full screen. So, all right. So you look out your window and you see the tops of these other cubes.
Yep. And oops, over here.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Wow.
That's a bridge over there.
Yeah, I can see the bridge in the background. Yeah, that's cool. So what are these all over the place, or is this unique to this location?
They actually exist here only, and in another Dutch city.
Okay.
The architect was a guy called Piet Blom. He first experimented with them in this city in the southern Netherlands, and then Rotterdam commissioned him to build them here.
Very cool. That is really cool. So, okay. So Jeff is saying you're the most well-traveled person he's ever known. So we got to ask the question. I got 2 questions for you. The first question is favorite place, why? And second question is, which passport do you use?
So the first question, I can tell you, I'm just one of these people. If you ask me what my favorite band was, or favorite book, or favorite, well,
we know your favorite friend is Jeff Holst.
Right. Right.
So besides that,
yeah. I don't know why I never have a favorite. Maybe I'm too indecisive. Maybe that's why I bounce.
Well, name us a handful of places we all have to go, like we cannot miss out on.
Hey, so I want to answer the question for you, and I want to see how I do. So a while ago, and by a while ago, I mean around a decade ago, I asked you this exact question that Jillian just asked, and you didn't even hesitate. You said the Dalmatian coast in Croatia. You said that was your favorite place. Now, you probably had just gotten back like the week before or something. Yeah. That's why it was your favorite that week. Right. But did it hold up? Do we still think the Dalmatian coast is one of the most beautiful places in the world?
I mean, it definitely is. But I mean, it really depends on what you're looking for, what you're into. I think it would vary by individual, and even by myself, sometimes, whether it's an urban or you're feeling more into nature or more Nordic climate or southern.
So Chattanooga, Tennessee, then that's your favorite place.
Chattanooga, Tennessee, right?
Yeah, that's
right there. Actually, Eastern Tennessee is, of course, very beautiful indeed. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I've been to Netherlands a lot. I have a big affinity for Netherlands, Germany. I would say all the Alpine region, and I just came back there not too long ago. I was camping there for 2 weeks. Switzerland, Austria. These are really beautiful. Northern Italy.
I love Northern Italy. I've been there in southern Switzerland.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I mean, the lakes, the combination of lakes and mountains, and the architecture and everything. It has it all. But yeah, it's just really It really depends. I have to say Hawaii was more impressive than I anticipated. I was really, most people, I don't know, for whatever reason, Hawaii was never on my list of places to go.
Jeff hates Hawaii.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
He's an anti-Hawaii person.
It's not that I hate Hawaii. I was underwhelmed by Hawaii.
Okay.
But I'll be honest, I only ever went to Honolulu and right around Honolulu.
Okay.
And I feel like if I had had more time, I was on a 12-hour layover on the way back from Sydney. So I was also very tired. But I did rent a car and drive around. So it's not like I just stayed right in the airport or something. But I feel like, maybe I need to give it a second chance.
Yeah, we were on a cruise that went to all the different islands. And
I've heard good things about the Hawaiian cruises.
Yeah, and I think also the other islands, Oahu is nice, but I think the other ones are a bit more, maybe a bit more of what we would expect in Hawaii. And then, I spent a week in Honolulu as well, but I have a friend there, pure coincidence, a girl who went to Michigan State, and she was nice enough to take me and my brother around and give us the personal, tour. So that was really nice. I think we got to see a lot more than we would have normally.
And that's a really, really big tip. I think if you can tap into your network, right, of people that this is one of the reasons why I like you so much. CW is you'll just call people up and say, hey, come on, I'm gonna be in Chattanooga, let's hang out. And that one, you're really interesting, so it's fun whenever you show up. But on top of that, that sort of thing is not something everyone does, but it is something I do when I travel. If I know someone in a foreign country, foreign city, whatever, I always try to track them down, because you just never know what they're going to know about the place you're going.
That's an interesting point. I mean, I will honestly say I am definitely one of those people who doesn't do that, but I'm going to start trying to make that a habit of, reaching out.
It's the whole reason I started Last Life Ever, Jillian, so that I would have someone in Temecula that I could track down.
Particularly in Temecula.
Temecula, yeah. No, seriously though, just give me a few examples. Dr. Pearson, right, the futurologist that we had on a few months ago. He lives in Britain. He said to me, "Yes, come hang out with me." That's amazing, right? And Ida, same thing, right? Lives in Tuscany. She said, "Hey, come hang out with us," right? No, I don't think that these people are just going to let random last lifers show up at their houses. So unfortunately, it doesn't work for everyone. But for me personally, it's a huge benefit of being involved in Last Life Ever is that I get to know people all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I think that makes a huge difference when you travel. Just like you said, Jeff, is that if you know somebody there locally,
and you don't have to. You don't have to stay with them. It's not like you have to move into their house. But if you can meet someone for coffee and they can just give you a tip onto where you can go, Dr. Pennells, who was on our show recently, was just telling me, if you come to Australia, you have to come to Perth. I'd be happy to spend the day with you and show you around.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the way to do it. That always makes travel a lot better. And when I travel, I always try to go meet with people and, consciously choose locations where maybe, I can meet up with somebody. Because to me, it can be kind of boring just by yourself. Although over the years, I've found ways to meet people easily in different cities. For example, you can go on a pub crawl, for example, if you're in a random city that you've never been to and you know nobody. And when you're there, you'll meet all these other people from other countries who are in the same boat as you. So that's a good, quick way to just meet some people rather than, maybe sit in your hotel room at night.
I will. That's such a great point. And the other thing I want to go back to, CW, real quick, is that you just said that you've been traveling 8 times back and forth between the United States and the Netherlands. And I assume that's because you have family in the United States, or is that just because you want to be here?
Both, of course. I have family in the Netherlands and the United States.
Okay.
A lot of friends in both as well. And then, of course, I usually work in the United States.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Normally, if it wasn't for this crisis, I would be in the United States right now. I would have been there since August.
Interesting.
But due to
that's
this,
a bummer. So have they given you any indication of when you're going to be able to come back to the United States, or no?
Well, in theory, now I could come back to the United States. but it's always a question with current things going on. Will things change? Could I get stuck somewhere? Will there be some quarantine things? So it's always a bit of a hassle right now, but I can get to the United States. Now the work opportunity that I would normally be doing, I can't really do at the moment. Not in the same way. So that's a difference. But I'm contemplating it, at least at the moment. But
well, and this is where having a second passport really helps too, because like if I was in Europe right now, I could get to the United States, but I could not get back to Europe.
No,
it wouldn't be possible. You can get back to Europe also because you have a European passport.
Right. Right. Wow. So this is and I'm just looking at your Instagram. I mean, literally in one day you're in Washington, D.C., the other day, New York City. And then the next day you're in Panama City Beach, Florida. This is crazy. Like
and
literally
that was all free too.
Yeah.
The travel was all free at least. And then I stayed with a friend, and then I stayed in a hostel.
Well, and you were supposed to come see me that week too, right? But then it got changed, right? You changed your route.
Right. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, like you literally, hold on. I just want to show everybody, give everybody an idea of what I'm talking about here. And I'm going to make this big, but like, look at this. I mean, I find this fascinating. You just were out through the whole Northeast in snow, and then there's Chicago, right?
Yeah.
But this is all Northeast up here, Washington, New York. And this is Florida. And then you're in New Orleans.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. How did you get around from place to place? And then you're in Hawaii. So, what is your job that allows you to do this much traveling? And how have you, or are you working at the same time? Can you kind of give people a flavor for that?
Well, yeah, I've been doing freelance work for, it's got to be 15 years now. Various types of work. But so that allows me to work abroad. I've also worked normal 9-to-5 jobs in between. And then I usually work during election time, particularly on election related work. And then obviously the good thing about that type of work is when there's election, you're working very hard, but as soon as the election's over, then the work ends. When I'm traveling intensely, it's usually in one of these blocks of open time.
Okay. So you travel, so you'll take like a, like say, this looks like it must've been over 2 months time, correct?
So this would have been, that would have been December, January, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very good. This is absolutely fascinating. I think it's just awesome.
By the way, if you haven't followed CW Burgers on Instagram, you should, because his pictures are amazing. My wife and I are constantly going, she'll call me up or she'll send me a message. Did you see what CW just posted? It's unbelievable. The pictures, the quality. I don't know how you get these photos, but you have a really good eye for photography.
Oh, well, thank you.
If you fail out of your electioneering business or whatever, you'll have to like get into photography.
Yeah, I thought about it actually, and I submitted I won first prize at a alumni photo contest for Michigan State. So my photo is in the International Center on the campus of Michigan State.
I'll have to check that out next time I get up that way.
So
but I've never had a paid profession.
If we want to, I mean, I just can't wait for the world to open back up, right? Because I want to do this. I want to be CW when I grow up. Like, I want to travel. I want to take a whole month and a half.
And this is why I wanted to have him on, because this is not a lifestyle that's for everyone. Let's be honest. Not every person wants to jump from job to job. There's got to be a lot of uncertainty associated with that.
There is. And there's also, there is a lot of poverty as well at times. So, I don't always show my bank account statement on Instagram, for example. So, that's something to keep in mind, which right now, because of the COVID stuff, especially this year, has been quite difficult. So yeah, it's not all nice traveling nonstop. There's a lot of problems as well, especially job security and such.
Okay, so job security aside,
Mhm.
and knowing you have job security issues, period. What do you do to finance your travel? A, B, do you plan in advance or do you just wing it?
Both. So one thing I have to say, if I would be an expert on, definitely one thing with travel, I do know how to travel cheap. I do know when to travel, how to travel. I am an expert at that. I have no problems. I stay with friends a lot. If I have to, I stay at hostels. I don't need luxurious locations.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
why you live in one of these fancy cube houses.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's another story. But then the other thing is, so you can see me in New Orleans and then in Michigan and then in DC or
Right.
but that's also because I'm visiting family. So my half brothers live in Louisiana, for example.
Okay.
So I have one brother at LSU, another brother at Tulane. So it's not just me going to New Orleans to party and live it up. I'm actually, so like I was there during Christmas with family. So, it wasn't like a normal thing. And so that as well. So even though it looks exotic sometimes, also like going to Holland or whatever, it's also often visiting family.
Let's back up for a second, because you said you're an expert on cheap travel, which
we need to bring him on to have an entire episode where we just talk.
Yeah, that's the thing. And so
we should have done that. We messed up. That should have been our topic.
we totally introduce starts now.
Yeah, that's right. We'll just start over. Yeah, why not? Right?
Yeah. So my thing would be sorry, Alexa keeps talking to me.
Okay, well, while you're fixing Alexa, so CW, do you have a hard stop? Like, do we have a little bit more time?
Yeah. No.
All right, great. Then we will literally just break this into 2 episodes, and we'll do a second episode starting right now. Welcome back.
CW.
Hey. Great to have you on the show. It
Great
looks like you're wearing the same clothes as last time.
Yeah. That's how you live cheap as well.
Yeah. So no, we were teasing a little bit, of course, but we were talking about how you just told us in the previous episode about how you're an expert on traveling cheap, and maybe we'll use this as a whole episode. Maybe we won't. We'll figure it out. But talk to us about that. Like, if say Jillian Sidoti wants to go to Europe on the cheap, what should she do? And if coronavirus isn't happening, because obviously it's difficult right now.
Well, first I would recommend, always use air miles, always use credit cards where you can collect air miles, always be conscious of, different promotions you can do. Air miles have definitely been a big help for me. So for example, that time that you mentioned in the last episode where I went to DC, New York, and Florida, that was from air miles and credits from the airlines. So you just kind of have to be savvy about this. Keep an eye open for, sometimes airlines will have promotions where if you buy miles, you get double or triple miles. This can actually be very cost effective. So, you just kind of got to study up on this. Now, I've done it for the past, almost 20 years, I suppose. So over the years, I've kind of just developed an instinct for it. But usually I fly for very cheap or nothing. I use budget airlines when possible. So for example, I flew New Orleans to Frankfurt for $200 something on Condor Airlines. So you gotta think outside the box. I've done things, for example, I've taken because flying from Chicago to Europe is much cheaper than flying from Lansing, Michigan, or Grand Rapids or Detroit.
Sure.
So I would take an Amtrak ticket for, $16 from Lansing to Chicago, then fly out. So, some of it's creativity. And then, I have the luxury. Not everybody has the luxury, of course. I can choose the timing, and that's always a big thing. So if you can go in September versus July, that's going to make a huge difference in the cost, in the price of accommodations, in the space you're going to have, how crowded, different tourist places and things will be.
Let me ask this. So if you're just thinking that sometime in the future you want to go to a particular place that you've never been, let's just pick a place like, let's say you've never been to India. Okay. I don't know if you've been to India or not. But okay. So if you wanted to go to India, how would you approach that problem to figure out the cheapest, most efficient way for you to go to India?
Yeah, now India would be a challenge for myself, because I would have to do a lot of research and stuff. So where would you even start?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm wondering.
Well, I do know people from India, and I guess that's exactly where I would start. I would ask my friends and contacts from India, and begin there, asking their recommendations. What's the best way to fly? Where's the best place to stay? When? How? I think that's where I would start. That would be interesting. See, Europe I know very well, because I've been all over Europe many times. But something like that would be more of a challenge to me as well, because I just don't know the situation the same way. But I guess that's where I would start.
But let's talk in generalities, because actually, when back when I was in the music industry, not now, I knew exactly which websites to go. Like, I knew to go to Hotwire for this city and Priceline for this city. I knew to go to, like, there used to be a website called airlineconsolidator.com. Like, for certain international flights, I would book there. But I've kind of fallen out of that expertise, because, well, it's just sometimes faster to just go online and book something. But let's just say we want to plan in advance and really look for bargains. Are there any websites you recommend? Any websites specific for Europe versus, travel to Europe versus travel to the United States, or travel around the United States?
Not in particular. I mean, I probably use a lot of the same ones most people would use, things like Kayak. I mean, also Skyscanner is quite popular in Europe. They can be better because they include a lot of the budget airlines, like Ryanair and stuff, that aren't included in others. Some of the budget airlines, actually, you have to go to the site themselves. They don't work with, because they don't want to pay commission to the third-party dealers. So that sometimes throws a lot of people off. And those, you just have to know that, like, you have your Ryanairs, you have your there's all sorts of various budget airlines.
So if you're in the US, there's not that many of the budget airlines.
No,
there are a few. Allegiant Air, for example, is one where, and I know this for a fact, like, if I want to fly from Knoxville, Tennessee to Vegas, it's so much cheaper. I mean, at least it was before. I mean, I don't even know if they're doing that route right now. That's a problem with COVID, right? But it was like, it'd be like $100 or something to fly round trip to Vegas from Knoxville, where if I just book a ticket from Chattanooga on American or Delta or something, it's 5 times as much money. So that's what you're talking about. It's knowing that, because if I run, like, I use Google Flights. I like Google Flights website for searching across multiple things, but that Allegiant Air doesn't show up on there. That's what you're talking about.
Yep. And so that's something you just have to kind of, and that's where you might have to search forums or just ask people to find out that type of information. The other thing in that regard is your level of comfort with traveling. And, certain people have different standards. I can be very comfortable in the lowest of economy, traveling in, with the lowest stuff, staying in the cheapest places, and it doesn't bother me. Riding public transportation, etc. But some people, they say, I can't fly, I can't sit in a budget airline for 6 hours and then take an Istanbul bus to a low class hotel. It's somewhere I've never been, and I understand that. So some of it is also, you have to decide ahead of time, like, okay, what am I willing to put up with? Stuff like this.
Well, and this is I'm really glad we're talking about this, because it's something that people bring up to me all the time. Is I've been quite a few places. Like last year, about a year ago, I was in China, And I know you have some familiarity with China as well because you've traveled there a fair amount. But so I was in China last year, and people were like, "Oh, I wish I could afford to go to China." Well, it's hard to go to China this year, obviously. Yeah. Last year it was a little bit different, but I only spent like $600 to go to China, like airfare, airfare, hotels, everything. Like it was $600 because I went on, I looked for a budget deal. I mean, I'm on all sorts of newsletters. Some of the ones I like are like Travel Zoo has a daily newsletter, or maybe it's a weekly newsletter, but they send you deals. Here's the top 20 deals of the week or whatever. And so there's all sorts of different like sort of aggregators of package deals. And if you just want to see something, I'm not generally a person, and I think you would probably agree with this, CW, like there's something about being able to do your own thing, right? Just sort of wander around. But you went on a cruise to Hawaii. You talked about that in the previous episode here. But there's something nice about that too, right? When things are sort of planned for you and it's kind of stress-free, if the pricing is right, it can be a really great opportunity.
Yeah, I have a personal preference. I like to be on my own, and I've always been somewhat very skeptical of, bus tours or cruises. I've never been on a cruise until a year and a half ago, I think it was my first cruise ever. And that's because I have family in New Orleans, and you have these cruises, leaving 5 blocks from the house.
Unbelievable value too. You can go on a 5-day cruise from New Orleans for like $250.
Yeah, and it was very cheap. Yeah. And so it was basically one of those things like where we said to ourselves, because my father had also never been on a cruise, my brothers had never been, and here we are living 5 blocks or whatever from the cruise terminal. Said, maybe we should do this.
For me,
I've only been on 2 cruises in my life, this one and the Hawaiian one, actually.
Cruises are incredible value, but for me, I always have this issue, and Jeff and I have talked about this before, with the environmental concerns. But I know flying isn't exactly environmentally friendly either, and to me, you fly out of necessity, but with the cruising, I don't know. I kind of worry about what I'm killing in the ocean while I'm partying on a boat.
Well, there's, the one thing to remember is there's not a lot of stuff in the middle of the ocean. Like people forget this. Most of the wildlife in the ocean is in the bottom of the ocean and on the edges of the ocean. So once you're in the middle of the ocean, it's pretty much free game. You can just dump chemicals in. It doesn't hurt anything.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't work that way, Jeff.
No, it does work that way.
I'm positive it doesn't.
No, it really kind of does work that way. There's a reason people don't fish 300 miles offshore, because there's nothing out there. It's just a big, empty, salty body of water. Like there's nothing out there. Like all of the wildlife, like 90% of the wildlife is within a few miles of shore.
I'm going to get somebody on here who's an expert on this, and then we'll figure this out.
And they're going to tell us it's really bad.
I'm not an expert.
They're going to tell us it's really bad for the environment to cruise. I have no doubt about that.
No, I think we could probably find a couple of different. We could get somebody from the cruise industry to tell us otherwise.
Yeah, we'll get both. So. Yeah. But anyway, so that's so off topic. But the point is,
no, it's not. It's not off topic at all, because CW's talking about cruising and how he avoided cruises in the past, and now he's cruising. And I'm like, this
I think he's still avoiding cruises, is what he was saying. He's only going on the 2. Oh wait, would you go on another one? Let's start with that.
Yeah, I think under the right conditions, the Caribbean one, it was cool to go on to, but and we stopped in Belize and Mexico, a couple ports, but each time I really was thinking, wow, I'd really like to walk around here, or I'd like to explore around here more. But then we had to be back on the boat. So I'm not so sure about. I would do another one, but I'm not sure if I'm a fan. Now, Hawaii was a different case, because Hawaii, you have all the different islands. And if you want to visit them all, you either have to get in 10 different airplanes.
So,
or that's a cruise is probably the most easy way to be able to visit multiple islands.
So let me make the pitch for cruising, because I listen. I travel both ways. I love cruising. I've gotten like elite status on more than one cruise line because I've cruised that much, right? Mm-hmm. I also really love wandering around. Like I love to just like put a backpack on my back and like wander around Europe, right? Or South America or something. Like I love that, and I'm going to continue to do that. But the thing about cruising is it's so darn easy. And it's so affordable.
I know.
You can jump on a cruise. Literally, you can go for a 7-day cruise. You can go to 4 or 5 different ports. Honestly, like the problem I have with cruises is that like I'm getting to the point where I feel like I've seen the stuff that cruises go to, right? Like, because I've been on enough.
Right.
If you've been to, I'm sure you went to Cozumel. If you've been to Cozumel, 10 times.
Right.
It's like Cozumel. Like, I mean, I like scuba diving. So if I go to Cozumel, I'm going to scuba dive because, every time you go underwater, it's different. Right.
Right.
But I mean, there's that legitimate concern if you go to the same ports over and over. But the best part about cruising is you unpack your stuff and your hotel room shows up at a different island every single day. You walk off the boat, you get to experience it. And there are some people that go on a cruise and they just, get off the boat. They go to the beach bar, they get drunk, they get back on the boat, they get drunk again. They wake up in the morning, they get off the boat, they get drunk. That's not how I cruise. That's not me. I'm not cruising like that. When I'm cruising, I'm like being strategic about it. Like the last time we went to Mexico on a cruise, we actually hired a guy to come in from a neighboring town, pick us up and drive us like 100 miles into the Yucatan away from the cruise port. So we're in a authentic, non-cruise port place. And we went diving in cenotes, right? Like underwater, freshwater caverns, basically. Underground freshwater caverns.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff you can do, and you can do it much more affordably if you just take the initiative. In Dominican Republic one year, we had a cruise that was like, it arrived at 5 p.m. and it stayed until midnight the next day. So it literally was like 30 some hours in port. And we rented a car and drove like a couple 100 miles around the island and explored.
Hey, that's exactly what we did. We took a cruise that went to a bunch of Caribbean islands years ago. It was a real estate cruise. And I will tell you, one of my greatest memories is when we got off at St. Kitts and I hired a guy and I paid him, again, $100 to drive us around the island all day. And we had the most amazing time. And the same when we went to Aruba on the same cruise. So I'm not saying I don't have an amazing time.
Right. I just think that for the value, it's hard, especially because people say to me like, oh, I wish I could go to Aruba. I could never afford it. Or I wish I could go to Europe, or I wish I could go to Africa, whatever. Right. But the truth of the matter is you can go to Egypt cheaper than you can go to Disney World.
This is true. No, that is absolutely
and cruises are even cheaper yet. So like if you are saying, I wish I could go to Aruba, well, you can. It's going to cost you like $500 and whatever it costs you to drive to Florida.
Right. Yeah. No, hey, Jeff, you're not wrong. I mean, and like I talk about the environmental concern, but one of the things I noticed while on a cruise, and we'll have this for another discussion, is the absolute food waste that happens on a cruise.
Tons of food waste, no doubt. Yeah. Although there's less than you think, because I know a lot of people from being on cruises and also feeling like it's important to like get to know people. Mm-hmm. I've made a lot of friends that work for cruise ships, and that food kind of gets recycled to their crew. Like
good.
The food that's not used is recycled for the crew. So that's
fantastic. No, and that makes me happy.
It's much less wasteful than you think. And they also, by the way, all of the major cruise lines are very aware of environmental concerns, and they spend a lot of effort trying to mitigate that. Now, granted, you put a several 100,000-ton ship in the ocean and drive a bunch of people around to different ports, there's going to be an environmental impact. But there's also an environmental impact when you drive to the grocery store. It doesn't make it necessarily wrong.
No. Hey, look, we're here on this. We're human beings. We're here on the earth and we're meant to use the earth. I just don't want to abuse the earth. And so I always wonder that with cruises. But I don't know, Jeffrey, you've made a very good case here for me. And I think CW and I are we're gonna find a nice little cruise once cruise lines open, and we're gonna go on and give you a full report.
This is what we're gonna do. We're just gonna make it a last life ever trip. It happens every time we talk about traveling anywhere. So now we have 153 possible last life ever trips. I don't know how we're going to sort through them all, but no. All kidding aside, though, what we should do, Jill, is we should probably plan a last life ever excursion that's a cruise, and we should get like 8 or 10 people to come with us.
Yeah.
And then we should get 8 or 10 people to come with us somewhere else, like say to Mozambique, right? Like something completely different than a cruise. And then we'll have an evaluation. The same 8 or 10 people will go on the cruise with us and come to Mozambique with us. And then we can take a vote. Are you coming with us, CW? You going to come on the Last Life Ever cruise Mozambique trip?
You know, if we're ever allowed to, and I can, then yeah, that sounds.
All right, perfect.
That would be amazing.
I know CW's up for it. CW will travel anywhere. He'll travel the entire United States plus Hawaii, which I know
in a weekend. Yeah, in like a
weekend. In 2 months, and then head on back to Europe.
Yeah, that's true.
So of course he's going to go on this trip. It's not even a question. It's just a question of when. And I don't think he can answer that question. Neither can we. Well, no, I think this is awesome, CW. I actually want to almost send you a little email and pick your brain a little further on some travel tips, and we'll post them on the Last Life Ever Facebook group, and you guys can check them out. But I don't want to hold you anymore unless Jeff has another question here.
Well, I did notice that we had some comments from one of our last lifers that I would like to share.
I was hoping, I didn't want to put this comment up because I thought it was like just a jerky comment, but go on.
No, that's okay. I believe that that CW will appreciate this comment. We had a question from Jason Miller, and he would like to know when you're getting your PhD.
Wow, that is a good question, because I mentioned in the last episode actually that that was my original plan always, and now at this point I can't see it in my near future. I've gone back and forth on it. After I finished my master's, I wanted to get some money, so I took a job. I worked in DC for a while. In retrospect, maybe I should have pursued my PhD immediately after my master's. And I really messed up in a way, because my master's was political culture and national identity. And I wrote my thesis on populism. And this was 2015. So the next year, and at the time, I wrote it. It was for a Dutch university, but I wrote it in English with the idea to publish it. But then I was like, who's going to care about European populism? It's not going to be a big thing. Then next year, 2016 happened. Brexit, Trump. Suddenly the whole world was looking at Geert Wilders, this Dutch politician, and all the stuff that I covered in my thesis. So in retrospect, I should have published it, and gone on with that topic. Now it's a bit difficult, although I still haven't ruled it out. But then I would really have to refocus, maybe write some articles and stuff to get back in academic radar qualifications. I also had some, debate whether to do that in the United States or Europe. And I have a lot of concerns about academic freedom at the moment as well. I feel that's a big issue, especially in the United States. That free speech and discussion is less and less valued. But that's my personal thing. So.
Jeff and I have many Saturday segments that we talk about education in the United States, particularly higher education, not necessarily primary education. But I have some very strong opinions. I mean, somebody who went to graduate school myself, I don't know if I would have the same recommendations for my own children to take the same path, unless they had a very specific thing that they were passionate about that called for that type of education.
I agree, by the way, completely. I say to people all the time, it's fine to go to school if you have a purpose behind it, but just going to school to get education in today's day and age, I mean, if you can do it for free and by the way, a lot of this has to do with something Jillian's really passionate about too, and that's creating multi-generational wealth, right? Mm-hmm. If you have your basic necessities taken care of, and this is something we didn't really talk about with CW, but one of the reasons I think that you're able to do what you do, bounce around and stuff, is that you have the benefit of some of the European social safety nets that we don't have as Americans.
Absolutely. That's true.
And you talked about that in the first episode. You were talking a little bit about how they paid you to go to school, which is something that they don't do here. That economic consideration about going to school is a lot different when someone gives you cash to go to school.
Yeah. And I mean, I have all those social things. So, for example, a big thing in the US is if you work for yourself, and I have, and maybe you guys too at various times, you really get hit hard on Social Security taxes, having to buy your own private insurance and all this stuff. In the Netherlands, I don't have any of those concerns.
Yeah.
Because I'm a Dutch citizen as well. And so, people ask me a lot of these questions. Well, for me, a lot of the fixed costs from working independently and stuff that an average American would have to worry about are not on my plate, which
so
really
you get your health screenings
survive.
in the Netherlands, huh?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Like when you're sick, you're like, I better go fly home.
I mean, I schedule doctor and dentist appointments in the Netherlands for sure. So that would be one of my secrets, I suppose, is how I can manage as I do. But yeah, that's a big issue, and also because. With Michigan State, I did get a lot of scholarships, actually. I paid very little to go to Michigan State, or I should say my parents paid very little. Actually, if you added it all together, it was almost free. And then I did my master's in the Netherlands. So that's also a big benefit to me. I never had those student loans. I never had the student debt, which has also been, really helped out.
Yeah, we had a whole episode on student debt and how it's just crushing Americans.
Oh, it's terrible.
And we don't want to crush the next generation.
It's really insane.
It really is. It's very
US
unfortunate that we haven't figured this out yet. And I'm not a socialist by any stretch of the imagination. Like I don't necessarily believe in, unfettered socialism. I don't think it's done France all that good for all intents and purposes. But I do think education, healthcare, things of that nature, where people are just looking to take care of themselves and improve themselves, to not have those as basics, or at least at an affordable level, is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I think we have a lot of rackets essentially that have been established in the U.S. within the legal industry, the medical industry, the academic industry, the banking loan industry, and they all kind of work in collaboration. And if you look at where a lot of the expenses of the U.S. go to, and it's unfortunate because a lot of average people, of course, also you're 18 years old, you don't know, get saddled with these huge debts. And I've personally known friends. When I worked in DC, for example, right out of college, I had a fantastic job, and a friend of mine, he also worked this job, loved it, great job working with students, fun, working for a nonprofit. But his student debt was so crushing. So he ended up taking a job that he hated. It paid higher, but he hated it. It was a 9 to 5, 2 weeks of vacation a year, compared to the more freewheeling job that we had before.
Yeah.
And it kind of like crushed his early 20s there, at least from what he planned, what he was doing, and what he had to do. All because when he was 18, he had chosen to go to a very expensive school and took out all these loans that they recommended to him. And at the time, you're 18, free money, give it to me. You can't.
And I know a lot of adults who are like, oh, I'm going to go back to college, or I'm going to go back to, that used to be a real thing of admiration, where you admired somebody who was like, oh, as an adult, I'm going to go back to college and I'm going to get it done. I'm going to get done what I didn't get done in the past, because I want to prove to my kids, my parents, my dog, my cat, whatever, that I did this. And now it's kind of like, why?
Oh, I'm thinking about going back to college. I want to put my student loans back in forbearance, because I'm in school and I won't have to pay on them anymore. It might be cheaper just to go to college for the rest of my life.
That is a reason. Actually,
I'm being a little facetious, because I'm getting really close to having my student loans gone, and if they weren't such a low interest rate, they would be. But it's tough. I mean, I've been paying on them for 10, 12, 13 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had relatively low student loans because, like Craig, I got a lot of scholarships at Michigan State as well.
Yeah, right.
And so I didn't have, for the amount of education I had a relatively small amount of debt. But it's still, $500 a month for 15 years now.
Yeah.
It's not nothing.
Yeah, it's
another mortgage payment.
When I always said between law school and undergraduate, I had $100,000, mostly from law school. But the thing was that in undergraduate, I did get some scholarship money, and then I worked my butt off I had 2 jobs when I wasn't in school. Like during summer, we were in a co-op program. So in those times when I was in the co-op program, I worked 2 jobs just to make money so I could pay for the next semester of school. So I wouldn't have huge student loans. Yeah. Well, and then I went to law school and I worked.
I have to cut you off because otherwise we're going to have a third episode.
I know. All right, Craig.
CW, here's what I would love for you to do. We have one last question for you, unless Jillian has anything else she wants to ask. My last question is: do you have any parting words of wisdom to share with our audience?
Parting words of wisdom. Oh man.
Yeah, put you on the spot. What's the most brilliant thing you can say right now?
I don't know.
That's actually brilliant. Actually, if you think about it, like
that is brilliant.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It was very deep and nuanced. Your answer, I appreciate that.
I can show you the sun set over Rotterdam. How about that?
Actually, you know what? There's serious wisdom to that right there.
You can see that.
Oh, we're gonna make you on full screen, right? Whoop, that's the wrong full screen. That's me and not him. Hold on, I was gonna put you on full screen and it didn't work. So. There we go. You'll see the sunset again. We'll give it another shot.
Oh yeah, well, it's evening here. So.
That's awesome.
So maybe that's a good last parting thing.
All right.
Thank you.
You know what? There is real wisdom to just finding beauty wherever, and that's something you're really good at with your photography. And so we appreciate that perspective for sure.
Yeah, so I remind everybody to go find CW at CW Birders on Instagram. You can see some really cool stuff. See his travels.
Really great.
And what's that?
I think he's talking over us because he's got an internet connection issue right now. So hopefully he comes back. But if not, hey, whatever, right? Hey, there you are. You're back. Good.
Hey, everybody. I just want to remind you that Jeff and I will be back and we'll do a little wrap up and tell our jokes and all of that other stuff after the break. And Jeff, any last words just to say bye to CW or?
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been great having you. It's always good to see you.
Thank you for having me on. It was great. A lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you soon.
Go! That was a great interview.
I really could have talked to CW for longer because he clearly had some very strong, I wouldn't say political views, but world views that I think probably transcend other people's views because he has traveled to so many places and so quickly. And he sees things very differently because if you look at his Instagram, and I encourage all of you to go look at his Instagram at CW Burgers, because he has some really fascinating pictures on there, and his willingness to just travel and do it inexpensively. I actually really want to bring him back to kind of dig into how he figured out, when to fly somewhere, how to fly somewhere, which websites to use, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we mentioned in the interview that we were going to break it into 2 parts, and we afterwards decided not to. So if anyone's wondering, there is no second part. It was all one part.
Yes.
The whole thing. It was one long interview. But anyway, good friend of mine from way back, obviously. Super great to talk to him. And you're absolutely right. He has a very unique way of looking at the world, and that makes it really, really amazing to talk to him.
Yeah, no, and he actually even said at one point in time, like, I don't always have a lot of money. I just figure out a way.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I actually felt like the beginning of the interview was a little boring.
He's your friend.
I know, and you know what? And I got that from our mutual friend Jillian, Mr. Miller, who told me, he goes, "Wow, CW is kind of on the boring side. I had to stop watching," and I was like, "Yeah, he did seem kind of boring." And then I realized, like, people who don't know how insanely interesting he is wouldn't realize that was the boring version of CW. So, and I think we got them, like, after he sort of warmed up a little bit, we got to see how interesting the guy really is. And it just kind of built the whole interview. So if you guys watched it already, I don't need to really tell you this, but yeah, fascinating. And you should follow him on Instagram. Actually, since the show was originally recorded, he's posted another picture of his house in the Netherlands that was like insanely cool, actually. Like a weird angle of those cube houses and stuff. So
yeah, no, it's I very much thoroughly enjoyed his Instagram, and if you guys want to go check it out, again, it's at CW Burgers. But I'm ready for my joke.
No. It is not that time yet.
Oh.
There's some stuff we have to talk about first. One, we have to talk about what's going on in our life, because that's what we do in our end notes. So, Jillian, what's going on in your life this week?
I am continuing to not homeschool, which means I literally just give my kids crap to do and then disappear.
Is that why I keep hearing them like in the background counting? When we're doing Zoom calls, I can hear them talking. And they're like, 2 times 2 is 4 or something. I mean, it was a little bit more complicated than that, but it was around that sort of thing.
Yeah, that was my Tom doing his math one day before we started doing a podcast. My seventh grader is doing pretty well. My 4th grader is struggling. He wants to go back to school. And my kindergartner is just like, can I get this over with?
Did you see I threw my baseball?
That's sweet.
I do that just to impress people with my dexterity. I was able to throw it and catch it all in one hand.
Wow.
Not that you can actually see my hands, but I assure you I'm only using one hand.
I used to play baseball.
I believe that. We talked about that on the very first episode of The Last Life Ever, where you admitted that your nickname is Bama. I can't believe I forgot to call you Bama. Bama.
Well,
so I know because this was a longer episode, we don't have to spend a lot of time chatting, but I do want to say one thing that's really important. It's been really nice getting to know you over the last year or so. And I'm sad that we only have like a year left to be friends.
You are so ridiculous. I know where you're going with this. And I think you're ridiculous. And the audience is going to think you're ridiculous too. And I want to tell all of you out there in the audience that whether you run or whether you don't run, I want to encourage you to come run the Kauai Half Marathon with us next Labor Day. You have a whole year to train. My son and I are training together, and we're all going to meet in Kauai and have an amazing time. I want you to join us. I implore you to join us. And Jeff's going to be joining us, but he insists he's going to die first.
Right. In 347 days, 16 hours, and 33 minutes, and 29 seconds. Well, actually, you know what? That's when it starts. I'll probably make it another 30 or 40 minutes after that. I'm determined not to die in the first half hour of the half marathon.
Dude, you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. You can run a half marathon.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit longer than a half marathon, but I had the benefit of taking 8 days. Listen, how much time do I have to finish a half marathon before I get dequalified or disqualified?
I don't know. We can look it up right now. Kauai Half Marathon. If they have a sweeper. Half marathon. We'll see if they have a sweeper.
There's definitely a frequently asked questions section. So let me look at that. Time does the race start? Where does it start? Are there shuttle buses to the start line? Time limit. Found it. Yes, there is a time limit. 8 hours for the marathon.
Okay.
All right, and you must pass. Well, that's the marathon because that doesn't really help me very much.
So it's probably 6 hours for the half marathon.
It's probably like 4 because it's half as long.
No, they usually don't do it that way.
Well, anyway, since the roads need to be reopened, race vehicles are required to pick up participants who fall behind pace and complete the first 6.9 miles. The 6.9 miles is 1 hour and 50 minutes. You have to do 1 hour and 50 minutes for 6.9 hours. All participants.
Mm-hmm. You can do it, Jeffrey.
I don't know. How fast is that? I think I can't. I might have to give up now. What's 7 miles times... Oh, it's a 16-minute pace. Yeah, I probably can't do that. I mean, honestly, I probably can do that. I did better than a 16-minute pace when I did the 10K, which, granted, was only 6.1 miles, but I feel like I could have made that extra 0.8 miles last year in less than the remaining, time that I had.
I'm going to give you 12 minutes and 30 seconds. You can do a consistent 12 minutes and 30-second miles.
No, cannot do that. My goal for my 10K was to be under 90 minutes. That was my goal. And I barely made it. Mm-hmm. And that is like a 14:30 pace.
Well, I'm telling you, you can do this. You're capable.
Oh, I probably am capable, but I will actually die.
Okay. Can we get to the jokes? Because you're ridiculous.
Well, maybe that was my joke. All right. Well, you know what? Let's hear your joke, Jillian. I mean, Bama.
My joke is a Dutch joke in honor of CW, who lives in Rotterdam.
Are you going to tell half a Dutch joke and half an American joke?
No, just a Dutch joke.
Okay, just checking. Is it in Dutch?
It is not. I do not speak Dutch.
Fair enough. All right, go ahead. Let me hear your Rotterdamany joke. Is that a word?
What do Dutch people? I went for a softball one, by the way. Speaking of baseballs, what do Dutch people need to kiss?
Cousins?
Oh my god! Oh my god! That's horrible.
Haven't you ever seen the classic Elvis Presley movie Kissing Cousins?
Are they
where
Dutch?
There's a blonde version of Elvis Presley? It's clearly the Dutch version of Elvis Presley. I don't know. It was the only thing that came to mind. What's the answer to your joke?
Tulips.
Tulips! Hilarious. Do you want to hear a funny story about tulips real quick?
Sure.
Well, there's actually a really sad story too. Do you want to hear the funny one or the sad one?
Go with God on that.
Okay.
I think I want to hear the funny one. Go with the funny one.
I'm just going to tell you both, actually. So the really sad one is there's this thing called the Tulip Festival in this town called Holland, where about 20 miles from where I grew up. And it's the biggest tulip festival outside of the Netherlands in the whole world, which isn't really surprising because there's probably like 2 tulip festivals outside of the Netherlands in the whole world. But it's like a really cool thing. And this year, because of coronavirus, is the first time it's ever been canceled.
I'm going to tell you something. It's funny. I knew where you're going with that only because Derek and I read an entire article and looked at all the pictures of the tulips they had to throw out.
Yeah, so sad.
Oh,
right?
it was terrible. It really, I don't know. It was the first thing because it was way back at the beginning of the pandemic.
It was like early May. Yeah, like the first week of May or something.
And it was early on in the pandemic, and the pictures of the tulips and the garbage, it was so depressing. It was the first time I felt like really depressed about the pandemic. It was very sad.
It was sad. And I've only ever been to Tulip Time once, in spite of the fact that I grew up right next to it, and people come from all over the world to go to Tulip Time. Only went to it once. And then it was raining and there was no one there. So it was very unexciting. But it's beautiful driving around that town at that time of year. But this year, people were stuck in their houses. So that was sad. So the funny story about tulips is one time I ordered some tulips for my wife.
Yeah.
It was funny. I thought they were roses because I ordered them online and I was like a little sleepy at the time. And when they arrived, I was like, they look nice. It'll be fine. But she didn't agree.
Oh my God. Really? She was that upset about it?
Yeah, tulips are her least favorite flower.
I didn't know you could. Okay, wait. Actually, you know what? My least favorite flower are carnations. I don't think they're very attractive.
I'm definitely sending you some carnations as soon as we get off this call.
They are cheap and gross.
Well, I was going to say something. I
I
almost said something really unflattering about you, and it would have been that you're cheap and gross.
That's terrible. But
I know you just like opened it up for that so much.
But it was funny because I was listening to you tell the story about how she was upset about getting tulips, and tulips are her least favorite flower. And then I was about to be very judgmental and say, who has a least favorite flower? And then I realized I have a least favorite flower. And it's
the really funny part about this is she actually probably wouldn't say they're her least favorite flower anymore. I think it's because she grew up and they went to Tulip Time all the time and it was crowded and like it was she's kind of introverted and didn't like want to be in big crowds and stuff. And it was like she always worked at Tulip Time for her uncle who had this popcorn wagon and sold caramel corn and stuff. And so it was like this like huge like production, and I think it just was like overwhelming for her. And now this year she went and bought tulip bulbs and is planting them because you plant them in the fall and they come up in the spring alongside of our retaining wall on our driveway. So they must not actually be her least favorite flower anymore. And I said that to her and she said, well, they're my least favorite indoor flower, whatever that means. So apparently they're okay when they're outside. So maybe if you saw a carnation in the wild, you'd feel different about it.
All right, everybody. That's been fun. Do you have a joke, Jeff? Because I'm going to wrap this one up.
Yes. What do you call Jillian Sidoti?
Okay. I don't know what.
Oh, goodness. You really should know. The same thing as a carnation.
Oh, my You were terrible. I'm glad my husband's not watching this.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of glad my wife's not either. I kind of was not very nice to her either. I told the story about how she didn't like my flowers. Although in fairness, I was kind of an idiot because I knew she didn't like tulips and I meant to order roses. So there is that.
All right, that is
not really her fault.
A little thoughtless. Okay.
No, a lot thoughtless. Okay, well, you know what? We're gonna wrap up now. Do you have anything else you want to tell anyone between, say, now and the rest of eternity?
I want everybody out there to live the best version of their last life ever.
Never